Welcome to our Pullman City Council meeting, another virtual meeting that we have here. And tonight's a special night because we have a legislative conference going on tonight. But first of all, Dee, would you please take roll?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Johnson.
Present.
Councilmember Chapman.
Present.
Councilmember McCall.
Here.
Councilmember Parks.
Here.
Councilmember Records.
Here.
Councilmember Sorensen.
Here.
Councilmember Weller.
Present.
Councilmember Wright.
Here.
For our announcements tonight, it is really good news that the Lions Club is going to continue on with its tradition, bringing Santa Claus to Pullman. And they're doing it tonight, tomorrow night, and Thursday night as well. So he'll be waving to you. It won't be the same kind of Santa Claus handing out candy canes because of all the COVID restrictions. But we do want to thank the Lions Club for keeping the tradition going to all the hills. So he and his crew will be waving to you as the sleigh drives by slowly on 3 neighborhoods. So Pioneer Hill, south end of Sunnyside Hill will be on today, Tuesday. They started around 6 o'clock this evening. North end of Sunnyside Hill will be Wednesday, and then Military Hill on Thursday, starting around 6 p.m. Maps and times are published in the Pullman Lion Club Facebook page. Other announcements tonight: to facilitate the city cleanup services, College Hill Street parking prohibition will be in effect now during the WSU winter break, Monday through Friday, December 21st through January 8th from 2 until 9 a.m. You can check that on the city webpage. And they'll give you some additional information there. And if you've not heard, Pullman Needs You campaign continues to support local and family-owned businesses. Please go online, take a look, and please shop local as much as you can. And believe me, they are taking all precautions to make sure it's safe when you get in there. We're masking up, we're doing the right things. And also, if you'd like to participate, Pullman Serves Forward, too. That campaign is going on. You can donate to the Community Action Center. And what they're doing is they're taking gift cards that they're purchasing from the local restaurants to help the restaurants. But at the same time, they're putting them in the food bags for the people who use the food bank. So a lot of good things going on in the community, trying to keep businesses going with all the different restrictions that are underway. Well, tonight, as I mentioned earlier, is a night that we're going to have our legislators with us tonight. And I see Joe Schmick is on the line and Mark Schessler. Looking for Mary Dye on my screen, but maybe I don't see, I haven't seen her yet. Maybe Rob Baker can tell us that she's on, but okay.
This is me, Mary Dye.
Oh, it is Mary. Okay, we've got all 3 legislators on. So, well, first of all, thank you for being with us tonight. And Mark, we want to congratulate you for all the years you served as not only minority leader, but majority leader too. And we noticed that you did step down and you're saying, hey, you know, enough is enough. You've done it for a long time. And I notice there's more of a smile on your face. You've taken that kind of burden off. So as we usually do, we'll start with our state senator, Mark Schessler, and then we'll go to Mary Dye and Joe Schmick to give us appraisal, first of all, of what the legislature is going to be like. Of course, this Zoom is going to be much of what your legislature is like. I understand the Senate will do some in person, but from the House, you'll probably be doing a lot of Zoom. And I remember Joe on one of our conversations said, you know, this is really good at this Zoom meetings because this is a positive because now we can testify from the east side. We don't have to travel all the time over to Olympia. So there's some good things coming out of some of this technology as well. So Mark Schessler, I'll turn it over to you first.
Well, thank you, Mayor Johnson, council members. Back for our traditional December joint meeting. You know, I think the first thing we have to clarify is that right now there is no deficit for this biennium. Never would have thought it last summer, but after a good revenue forecast in September, the November revenue forecast was surprisingly good and quite a significant drop in caseloads. We can carry forward all current law budget items we can potentially use budget stabilization account for one-time things such as fires or some of the COVID-related economic issues. And the following biennium, if we stuck to current law, probably wouldn't be a real big deal. Now, the governor's rolled out very, very expensive plans that will take, obviously, draconian cuts or large taxes. You can take your pick, but more than likely the tax route. The Senate is going to be a hybrid version of what you're used to. Legislative aides, one only, will be allowed in the offices. 0 guests in your office, period. And committee hearings will be virtual. Remote testimony will be utilized. But it's not as good if you believe in openness as it should be. First of all, the committee chairman still runs the roost, and that committee chair chooses who testifies. One major committee chair already said 2 hours, that's it, period, it's over. No more. And we only have so many minutes in a hearing, so many hearings per session. And the chance to meet with groups that each and every one of you belong to in person, face to face, is over. And it's a lot harder to say no to the folks that represent many groups in your district than it is through an impersonal email or other. The system is going to be clunky at the very least to begin with. Little procedural things that happen in the legislature certainly are going to be more challenging than they are in the past. That will slow the process down inevitably, which may be good or may be bad depending on what you're looking to get done. We'll be looking at a capital budget that's formula driven, mostly bipartisan because it always requires a 60% bond vote. I'll be working with Jim Honeyford on the capital budget this year. Wanted to be involved in something relevant. I believe that is. I think the budget that is far and away the most challenging is transportation. Highway traffic is down in the teens since March. Cars don't drive, they don't burn gas, we don't get revenue. Tolling is down probably 40%. Ferry operations are down 40 to 60%, so on and so forth. You get the picture. Money is down. We wrote an austere budget last year anticipating that potentially $30 car tabs would last. So there was a little cushion built in, but not a heck of a lot. So I think there's going to be a lot of interest in transportation, whether there's a stomach to take some of the more challenging ideas yet to be determined. For example, vehicle miles traveled. Many people care deeply about their privacy and don't really want government to know where they've gone. Also, it doesn't collect any money from out-of-state travelers, and it's expensive to administer, probably about 10%. The second alternative for a variety of things is a carbon tax. And if I look at the 9th legislative district, our average household income is about $55,000, which is half of what the 5 or 6 most affluent districts are in Western Washington. So at the end of the day, who pays the most in a carbon tax as a part of their household income? The lower end of wealthy citizens or the higher end? Because we all burn similar amounts of gas, rural people more. If you heat your home with natural gas, oil, you certainly are going to be up there. So it's a troubling proposal, whether it's used for the general fund, whether it's used for social justice or transportation, it presents its own problems. So I will continue on the Labor Committee, Commerce and Tribal Relations. Not everybody wants to serve there, so I'll take another year in the saddle there. And I'll be continuing, of course, with Ways and Means and Capital Budget.
You want to pass it on then from that point? Because I know usually you talk about some of the other challenges ahead of you. And as far as I know, the carbon tax, I've already heard one presentation. And again, they were West Side legislators talking. I think there's two different proposals out there for a carbon tax. But anything else that you started right out by saying, hey, we don't have a deficit issue. So, hey, things are a lot rosier than we thought. What happened to the 4.2 billion shortfall?
You know, when you pick up $1 billion here, $1 billion there, pretty soon it's real money. But I think, you know, a lot of our people, K-12, human services, higher ed, went through the budget drill and haven't heard the news that it's over. Now, it's not going to mean you can have everything, but it's certainly a lot better when you can tell people that take care of those with developmental disabilities that 15% cut was just a drill. But I've got real capable House members, and I think I'll turn it over to them. They have a little different assignments in a different chamber that they can talk about.
Okay, we'll go to Joe Schmick next, and then we'll go to Mary Dye. Thank you all again for being here.
Well, hi, everyone. Thank you, Mayor and council members. I am sorry that we're not there in person. It's one of the things I kind of look forward to each year, but next year. The House, we still haven't had final committee assignments. I suspect that at least my assignments will be very similar to what I've had in the past. A limit to how many House members can be in Olympia, and that will be due to low connectivity from their homes. The Capitol will be closed, at least on the House side, to lobbyists and to constituents, and so we're going to have to make every effort to make sure that when our folks at home need to talk with us, we're available. I know that I've already talked to my LA, and we'll be working into the evening, taking evening meetings just to make sure that there's adequate access. I'm going to make a point of making sure that if you want to talk to me, I'm going to make myself available. One of the things that has come up just lately this fall that I wanted to talk to about, and this was a young man that was in the Pullman hospital. He's autistic, a minor, and we just don't have enough facilities for these folks that need some pretty intensive outpatient treatments. And that's something that I'm going to be looking at pretty hard because there's a hole there. This young man ended up, we couldn't find a bed here in the state, ended up in Oklahoma. And so that's where he's at. What happens when he comes back? I think that there are some real issues there about how the continuum of care, we can do much better. And so that's one of the things I'll be looking for, trying to fix a little bit, because I think that's pretty pressing, especially now after going through COVID and all the mental health issues out there. I don't know if you follow, but if you are desiring treatment, it's pretty hard to come by right at the moment. And so it's a real pressing issue. I just want to talk about suicides among our youth are up. And that is very concerning. We've got to get our kids back in school safely, but they need to be in school. They're the lowest risk folks. And it's just something I'm going to push for is try to find a way to get these kids back in school. One thing about kids, if they don't have school there, they will find something to occupy their time, and oftentimes it's not the best. I want to allow Mary a chance to visit, but that's kind of the lay of the land, and I am looking forward to hearing what your priorities are, because they're always well thought out, and I'll look forward to working with you. Thank you for the few moments that I've had to visit with you.
Okay, Mary Dye. At least I see
So
the.
thank you so.
Okay.
So can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. I apologize for not being on the Zoom. It's an app that isn't supported by my phone, and we're having, I'll admit, a bit of a gathering for our church Christmas. It's a small church, so hopefully we didn't overshoot the meeting number. But I would say that in terms of what the session looks like, we did a practice session today again on the floor of the House to transfer back and forth between Zoom and Teams. And it is a little bit clunky. Each one of us have unique and difficult problems moving back and forth and using the technology. But I just think it'll take a lot of practice to get better at it as we learn the system. I think we'll feel more comfortable with it after the first week. But in terms of the dynamic, a lot of things that happen in the legislature happen because you develop relationships with each other. And as the ebb and flow of the policies are being debated, it's the catching a person in the hall or between votes in the floor of the House and really coming to understandings that creates good policy. So we're going to have to learn how to do that via text and emails and phone calls and things, and just know that it can be done. I do hope that there will be a safe space where we can all express our views and represent our district well in that. I'm going to be focusing on the carbon and energy policies. I'll be serving on the Energy and Environment Committee, I hope. We haven't been assigned yet. And then the Ag Committee was a joy for me last year. I don't know, but I hope that I also get to continue there. Looking at the committee assignments, they selected Representative Chapman, a moderate from a rural district, to fill the chairmanship position in that committee. And I think that was a nice gesture to allow the ag community to have someone that we can easily work bipartisan in the House to get that done. The carbon issues that are interesting, Chairman Fitzgibbons is excited about his cap and invest, as he calls it. So it's a cap and trade program. So that will definitely run the cost of energy up for the average homeowner and average commuter. The other proposal on the table is a carbon tax that would be used to invest in infrastructure and transportation, and it would be a bonding instrument. So they will spend carbon tax, $16 billion, I think, over 10 years, and then bond it and pay it back in 30, similar to the Connecting Washington, but not focusing on transportation only. So that's that's kind of one of their focuses. And then Fitzgibbons has said he wants to run the low carbon fuel standards, and he's hopeful that he will get that. Again, implying that it will help producers in Eastern Washington, but in reality, those feedstocks generally come from the Midwest, and that the feedstocks that are produced in the basin are generally products that are high value, and it would be a real step down to have to utilize it for transportation fuels. So that's something that's an issue. I don't know. I'm concerned about the idea that we would tax an economy that has been set back on its heels. And listening to the folks in Pullman and other areas, the difficulties of this second shutdown have been really profound, and it's devastating to our small family-owned independent businesses. And whatever we can do to speak into that Olympia crowd and let them understand how the harms far outweighed the benefits of this second shutdown, I hope that we can make that understood so that we never do that to the people of our state again. But that's where I'm at, and I'm going to look forward to hearing about what you guys are in need of, and your policies and plans going forward.
Mary, you've been a leader in broadband, especially in the rural areas, and with the difficulty that people have had, especially students, trying to hook up so they can do a Zoom classroom. We've even had that here in Pullman, where we've had to bus students in just because they had no internet service out where they were at. And even the other technology that the district tried to get was not even satisfactory. You're still going to be a champion on the broadband issue, aren't you?
Absolutely. There's a number of proposals that are out there. I hope that they will. I'm going to be advocating strongly that we fully fund the CURB, the Community Economic Revitalization Board, to continue with their projects, because they have been so nimble and agile, and they're not constrained by the metrics that were put into the governor's bill. The governor's bill limits the construction to those communities that have no access to fiber, and then it moves from there, and it with an emphasis on tribal communities first and then moving out. And so what they found, the Public Works Board has had to transfer a lot of the project requests back to the CURB board because they don't fit the metric of no access. There's a lot of fiber in the state. It's just that it's proprietary, and those companies aren't choosing to build out to the rural communities. And so that's why we have these problems. Having a dark fiber open access network helps disrupt the marketplace just enough and makes it affordable for new players to come in and serve the rural communities. And I think that's really important. Maya Gregerson has a bill. She wants $145 million of taxpayer money. She's thinking of a B&O tax on tech to get that money in order to build a public system from the state down. And then there's the PUDs wanting retail authority. I would strongly encourage against that, because the PUDs would then be competing directly with private sector telecom, and they would be paying for their competition through ratepayer increases, even if those customers are not necessarily on their system. So I don't think that that's a particularly good answer. So I guess that's what I know on the landscape, but I do know there's going to be digital equity was part of the governor's announcement for his equity initiative, and there's going to be a big push, and I think they're counting on federal dollars to come in and help fill the gap.
And it's not just an East Side problem. I'm online with the Washington Economic Recovery Coalition, and that's mostly West Side, and they've got some definitely broadband issues over on the West Side too. So it's not just strictly the East Side, but we appreciate your chat.
Exactly. That's why Beth Tholio co-signed my bill. She was on the Iowa's Prime, and she was co-sponsor of that bill, because Olympia has horrible internet access, and many of the lobby community search to find properties where they have good access to internet. There's a lot of space on that town that doesn't have good internet.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to the council now, because I know the council probably has some ideas here. And we do have our legislative agenda that has been sent out. I'm hoping that you got it. If not, we definitely will send it out to you tomorrow morning. But in the meantime, I'm looking now for the council. Anybody who would like to speak, please raise your hand and we'll call you. And I know, Nathan, you just sent out a note to all three legislators regarding marijuana research. You want to talk about that just briefly?
Yes, sir. I'll turn on this light so that it's a little light. Yeah, so Representative Dye, I'm not sure if you received it. It looked like it had come back. But I just wanted to give you a real quick update on the amount of support that you've provided for marijuana research here in Washington. You know, as you know, we've here in Pullman done quite a bit of research regarding impairment. And part of the challenge that's facing not only Washington now for several years, but as the rest of the nation legalizes or decriminalizes not only marijuana, but it looks like other drugs are beginning to come online in therapeutic areas. The challenge remains how to detect impairment of drivers impairment of people in industry, even marijuana growers and marijuana sellers have expressed some questions how to tell if they're if the people that they employ are impaired during work, because that can result in a lot of challenges. It can, affect their insurance, especially if people are impaired driving forklifts at these plants, at these grow operations. So if you just refer quickly, and I'm not going to say everything that I wrote here, but you know that last year, or I hope last year we worked with Washington Patrol. We were conducting a green and wet lab in Ellensburg, Washington, and the Cannabis Alliance helped with providing some direction as well. And it provided great data. We were working, of course, with WSU as well to gather saliva and blood and impairment information. Unfortunately, some of that funding did not come to WSU, and so we faced some challenges. However, recently there's a device that has come from the research. It's called Druid, and it utilizes an app actually to detect psychomotor changes due to impairment. And it's not only marijuana, it's also with cocaine, liquor, so on and so forth. So your advocacy, your support of research here in Washington has gone above and beyond and really has put Washington, and I would say Eastern Washington, on the map at being the forefront in impairment detection, which is going to be so important moving forward. As you noticed in the letter, initiatives are showing up in 5 state ballots in 2020. And Washington, and yourselves included, I think that we can be at the pinnacle of looking into this and minimizing adverse consequences from impairment in public health and public safety. So I'm not going to say any more. I've said plenty. I provided more information in that email. I'm open for questions, but so is Dr. Loveridge, who I CC'd on the email.
Okay, thank you, Nathan. Others who would like to make comments or share some of the information off of our legislative priorities? You can certainly show your hand. I'm trying to make sure the council is part of this here tonight. And I know Dan Records there. Thank you very much. I know you've got a couple of those priorities that are on that list. So I was hoping
I'm just trying to figure out how to unmute here. So thank you, Representative Schmick and Dye and Senator Schessler. I know that Representative Schmick participated and I believe, I don't remember who else participated, but in a panel discussion with the mayor and I a couple of years ago with the Ruckelshaus Center, looking at a whole host of issues dealing with the framework for development and in Washington. And over the last couple of years, there has been work to revise sections of code in the RCWs to allow for more flexibility and options in our in that allows municipalities and counties to have more flexibility in encouraging development of affordable housing, and that remains a large issue in Pullman, and through the economic impact of COVID, that's only being exacerbated with the number of families that have suffered job losses, and and with eviction moratoriums, as those come to an end, there is still that challenge remaining of people who owe all of that back money and rent, who may be facing some pretty dire situations in terms of their ability to find adequate housing. So I would encourage and support efforts continuing in the legislature to find areas where we can have flexibility in the code that allows municipalities and counties to have more control and employ different types of flexible options, like smaller footprint housing, more energy efficient housing that can give people more options to purchase or rent residences that don't cost as much, in not just in the cost of the residence itself, but the cost of energy resources that they employ along with that. In addition to kind of some of the other needs we see in terms of just the amount of funding and resources available from the state to assist us in developing residential facilities and options for vouchers and the like for those families that find themselves in emergency situations. I know that the work of our Community Action Center and some of the funding mechanisms that are currently employed in the state, the Community Action Center has been kind of a great partner for both Whitman County and the city of Pullman in developing residential communities, residential facilities for low-income housing. But the fact still remains that especially during winter, it is extremely difficult to organize resources for indigents living in our communities that find no safe shelter during the colder winter months. And the resources for them are few and far between. And I would just encourage efforts to address that issue. It's an ongoing issue. It's been a longstanding issue in our communities. I think we need to just look at all flexible options to allow for changes in the funding models, but also the how we secure liability insurance for such facilities as well.
There's a reaction from the legislators.
Well, Dan, I had my hand up. I think I would like to see when session starts or closer, concrete examples of the type of things that you mentioned, because they're fairly general and they sound pretty good. I think the one concern I really have for affordable housing is the new Building Codes Council standard. I think that threatens to put middle class housing out of reach in all new construction. I mean, I believe in energy efficiency, but there's a point of diminishing returns when a family wants affordable housing.
Right.
Okay. Joe, I saw your, go to Al Sorensen next. Al?
I just wanted to add on top of Mark's comments there. I speak with a lot of subcontractors and general contractors in Pullman, and those new codes are definitely going to be a problem, and it's not going to help any type of affordable housing going on, and it's not because we need it here, to be honest with you. So it's just continuing to be a problem. So I don't know how we handle any of that, but that is an issue. Thank you for talking about it.
So Mayor Johnson,
Yes.
this is Mary Dunn. I just reviewed, the governor had his announcement on his carbon agenda today, this afternoon. And apparently in the conference, my staff wrote a brief on it. They said that natural gas in buildings is going to end, and it's going to be called the Healthy Homes and Clean Building Act. And it goes much further than last year's electrification bill. And it requires all new buildings to be zero carbon by 2030. That means they can't have natural gas heat or hot water. Inslee said that gas for cooking stoves would be allowed, though it's questionable whether gas distribution companies could exist if the other sources of demand are outlawed. And it puts the state on a path to eliminate fossil fuels from existing buildings by 2050. And it creates a heat pump and electrification program for space and water heating for the utilities. to provide those incentives. So it's a pretty significant increase in cost in general. And I do think of what Senator Schessler said about the differential between median incomes across the state. And one of the bigger heavy lists for any family or homeowner is changing your furnace system out. And so they're asking a tremendous amount of every single citizen in the state.
Again, did they give a year when this would be phased out?
Yes, they the year that they want the new buildings phased as 2030, so you've got 10 years. And then all fossil fuel elimination from all buildings is 2050.
I can remember when
So
I was
all gas, and that would be like all of the gas utilities. It's the carbon footprint of the gas utility is so low in many ways because they don't transport, they transport by pipeline. And so it's a very efficient delivery system, and the furnaces are very efficient in terms of the utilization of the BTUs of their product to conversion to energy. So it's a shame that we're not thinking more holistically on this issue. Go ahead. I'm sorry I interrupted, Mayor.
That's all right. I just know what it was like to pay for electric hot water heaters when I was back in the Midwest, and so grateful to get back where I could have natural gas for hot water heater and natural gas for furnace. It made a huge difference. And then we had a lot of vehicles, from the utility companies who were driving with natural gas and actually not polluting the environment. So natural gas has always been considered the clean energy. And when I was going online and listening to a couple of the legislators from the West Side talking about their carbon initiative, I kept thinking, why don't we eventually admit that hydro is renewable? That should be a part of that whole message, because our dams are producing renewable energy. I mean, it makes so much common sense. But there again.
Let me have my seatmates correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is the Clean Energy Transformation Act that passed last year, one of the small glimmers of good in that bill, amongst a whole bunch of horrible, was that it did say that hydro is renewable.
They finally admitted. Okay.
Yeah. But if I'm wrong, my seatmates can correct me on that. And
no, you're correct.
Okay, and in terms of the vision that I would like to throw out, because you can't just say no, no, no all the time. You have to have something good to offer to the debate. And so I've put together a package of bills to point to urban heat island effect and the built space. Most of the population in the United States lives on the parentheses within 100 miles of the oceans, and the Pacific Ocean is where our jet stream puts the climate or the weather pattern across the continent. And the West Coast is a very urbanized coast with lots of heat islands on it that are changing, of course, obviously the weather patterns across the continent. So I want people to think about global warming, not necessarily as our energy input being this is good and that's bad, but rather to think of it as our landscape management needing to be improved. So large landscapes of built spaces that are blocking the flow of the jet stream from the Pacific Ocean will have an impact on weather and climate across the continent. And the other thing is large landscapes of timberland, 289 million square miles of timberland on this continent that's not being managed very well. That has a significant impact as well on climate. So I think that those are the idea that large landscape stewardship needs to be rethought and reimagined, and especially the urban core that has significant heating, about 15 degrees warmer on average than the rural landscape around it. So I think we need to be thinking more in terms of landscape management rather than just focusing on our energy sources.
Other council members? Before I go back to you, Nathan, I want to make sure I got other council members here first. And since I don't see any others, okay, we'll go to Ann Parks next.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, representatives and Senator, for being here with us tonight. We talked when we talked about these priorities, we sort of came up with 3 key areas related to immediate help, and that would be recovery, which Dan spoke to a little bit, retention of our businesses that are going through such difficult times right now, and of our citizens, our residents, frankly. I know it seems like some people are leaving the area because they have to, so that's concerning. And then recruitment, looking down the road. I'd like to speak to recovery just in general in different areas. Economically, of course, that is, very, very important to us. And like I said, we've all acknowledged that this latest shutdown is devastating to our businesses. And I want to give kudos to our Pullman business community and our Chamber of Commerce for coming up with some really creative ways to get the word out about patronizing our local businesses and incentivizing that as well. And I'm very proud of that. But I want to also talk about recovery as far as Representative Schmick, you were talking about mental health, depression, and suicide. And the resources are just, you said, if somebody wants to get help right now, it's very difficult. I have a friend who just relocated in the last year from Pullman to Stanwood, north of Seattle, and he was seeing a practitioner here, a mental health therapist. And when he finally made contact with her just a few weeks ago, thinking maybe they could continue via telehealth, and she just said, "There's absolutely, I cannot. I'm just not able to." And not only that, she wasn't sure how he could get help where he is now. Like I thought she might be able to just refer him, but she said, well, everybody is just so overwhelmed right now. And so she recommended he go through a primary care physician to try to get a referral. So that's just an example to me, a small example of how overwhelmed and overwrought the system is, even more so than I think when we talked a year ago, because of COVID. So I would really like to see some action activity toward emergency relief funding for all of these, everything, but our business communities and our healthcare systems. There's a growing concern in the nation that healthcare systems will become more and more overwhelmed. And so that would be a priority that I would be interested in. And I know it's very short term and immediate, but I think that's where the need is right now. The primary need is. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the economic recovery things floating out there. In the hospitality industry, one of the things, every business pays the same fee for a liquor license, large or small. There's been a number of members have said, let's suspend that for a year, give them a break. We've had proposals about very targeted B&O. We've had proposals about targeted L&I holidays. Across the board, obviously, is a budget buster, but targeted. But I think the single biggest wreck coming is unemployment insurance taxes in 2021. If we look at that, AWB has said some businesses could see as high as 500% unemployment and insurance taxes, clearly north of $1 billion. And if you're one of these businesses that's been shut down, you got to pay it for the previous quarter anyway, whether you're making money or closed, you're on the hook. There's several routes we can go. The governor refused to use any CARES Act money to buy those costs down. If an eventual federal plan to the states and local government comes, clearly a chunk of that has to be earmarked for unemployment insurance community, or possibly some of our budget stabilization account, because the socialized cost will go up 100 points for everybody, even perfect employers, than those with history, Katie bar the doors. That's really troubling. one previous chamber meeting, the Pullman Chamber reviewed Senator Kaiser's proposal. And as the Seattle Times said, it had some merit to it with a smoothing factor in the rates, but it also proposes raising the taxable salary cap and going back to allowing voluntary quits to collect unemployment. So it's a flawed vehicle, but I think in the recovery, that unemployment insurance train is coming down the tracks, and most of our employers don't see it yet. Even, some of our nonprofit groups have said, well, it doesn't apply. Yep, it applies to you too, even with perfect history. So it's going to hit a lot of people, and they really haven't realized how tough it's going to be and why we got to keep options on the table for unemployment insurance.
Thank you. That's very good to think about and to know for sure. In the last year, I've found myself making a career change, and I'm now working for a nonprofit, our local domestic violence and sexual assault shelter agency. And so I'm seeing much more as well the need on, for survivors of those situations and the need that is there as well. But in nonprofit world is a lot different than regular business world for sure.
Well, I think if we look, for example, at home health for our seniors, any increase they get in the budget for the agencies could be wiped out by the unemployment insurance taxes.
Absolutely.
And we don't realize how broad it's going to hit our economy.
Wow, that's a good heads up. Thank you.
Okay, Nathan, we'll go back to you now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to real quick tell all three of you how much I've had the pleasure, and several other people here have had the pleasure to work with you throughout the many years. And I just want to recognize, Joe, you or Representative Schmick, you and I were on a call about, I think, a month ago, actually, regarding mental health and your work in that field and identifying, the barriers and the challenges that we'll be facing our youngest, our children. Even though I don't have children, I understand and can see the challenges that will be facing them, especially in the way of psychological and emotional challenges. I think one of the biggest things, and it is in the paper that was shared with you, even though I support what is occurring with the COVID, restrictions, it's going to have some significant. And I feel that there hasn't been enough research done, and it's going to have a significant impact on the emotional, mental well-being, not only now, but in the future. And I just wanted to tell you, Representative Schmick, thank you so much for your representation. And if there's anything that we can do, please let us know, because there are those barriers between certification between our border states and Washington. So I know that was one of your key things. And, Representative Dye, thank you for also recognizing the climate, the heat, the urban heat effect. That's huge. The built environment that's not often understood. And Mark, thank you so much for your continued support of us here in Eastern Washington. So that's enough for me.
Right. And Nathan, thank you for mentioning one of the things that we've talked about on our Chamber Governmental Affairs Committee meeting that all three of our legislators are on at 7:30 in the morning on Fridays. And again, thank you for doing that. But we also have had a chance to talk about the reciprocity agreements. It would be sure great to have between states, so we can import some mental health counselors into the state of Washington, that they are credentialed. And Joe, I know you've been very much involved with that process. It's in part of our legislative priorities, and we're also talking about support for our hospitals. Obviously, they've been hit hard with the COVID-19 response. We've had quite a very large fundraising effort here. Pat Wright is the chair of our Pullman Regional Hospital Foundation Board, and I know she's been very much involved in trying to raise funds, not only for COVID relief, but also for building a residency program here to also help get more family practitioners in the area. I'll just go back to Joe because I know you've been very much involved, and you've actually been testifying nationwide before COVID hit. I can remember seeing you at the airport. You were flying off to be one of the expert witnesses someplace else. So, Joe?
Well, I did want to bring up a couple things, and you've hit a couple issues. Washington does not play nice with our neighbors. And credentialing of people coming in. Just look at the nurse compact. I mean, to be very blunt, the unions don't like it because they're seeing it as taking away some of their funding. Therefore, they have put up roadblocks. But we need that. I mean, whether you're a military family coming into Fairchild, where you have someone, husband or wife, is a nurse, registered nurse, it's hard to get them licensed, and we just got to continue on that. I would like to go back to Ann, what you were talking about, mental health. Right now, we have such a severe workforce shortage that we're going to really have to push the telemedicine format for the time being, because while we invested in a hospital to grow our own workforce in the mental health, they're not there yet. And it's like we need them now. And so anything that we can do in the meantime to get that numbers up to help people is a good thing. I am really concerned about our overall business economy, especially in the rural areas. This has been hard on our folks in our communities, and I'm going to be really reticent to want to put any burden on our businesses. Senator Schessler talked about, the unemployment insurance. I mean, that money's got to be paid back, and boy, that's just a huge burden sitting over the heads of our businesses. We know how to open the businesses safely. They can operate safely. We got to get them up and going and operating. I watch too many businesses close right now, and it's very sad. It's heartbreaking. And so, just a general rule, I will be very reluctant to put any more burden on businesses, trying to help them in every way we can to keep them alive. So enough. I've talked enough, but I think that's really important for our district.
Brandon Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you to all three of you for just any advocacy that you do on our behalf. And I, like my colleagues, realize that you don't just represent Pullman. You represent a lot more than that, but it's really appreciated when you're so willing to take our phone calls and emails and all that. When I look at our legislative priorities, I'm just thinking the economic recovery portion of it. Two things I just wanted to mention. One of them you absolutely can see in the document that was sent, but it said that we would look for funding opportunities like transportation benefit districts, and as we looked at our downtown master plan, and of course the South Bypass was one of the things in there. I realize we have to step up and we have to be willing to have some form of a local match before we're asking for the legislature to just give us money. But if we do that kind of thing, if we implement a TBD, I certainly would appreciate any additional lobbying that we could get from you to help this. I think it would dramatically help our downtown, certainly, to be more walkable, more just the kind of place where placemaking occurs, and maybe a little more vibrancy downtown, and some some ability for residents to feel safe to go out and make purchases. I think that'd be awesome. The other thing is, we've mentioned children. I sat through a really very interesting economic development webinar that MRSC had hosted a couple weeks ago. And one of the economic development directors that represents Thurston County talked about where they're putting a lot of their emphasis right now is childcare. And, it was not something that I had thought about, but he said that, in terms of all these brilliant economic minds that had met, that we need more incentives for folks as it pertains to childcare. If people can feel like their kids are safe and well cared for, they're more likely to go out and explore different kinds of jobs, things that we definitely need. They might just even go into the workforce, where right now they're feeling like they're at home and sort of stuck at home because they want their kids to be cared for. And so that really stood out to me. I have 4 kids. And mine are cared for, but I can imagine if somebody, the difference between getting a job or getting a better job or doing something and not is that childcare. This isn't on our priorities list, but I think it definitely goes into the economic recovery, and it was something that I just had watched, and I think you might know more about that than I do, but anything we can do moving forward, I think these experts are right. I think that any kind of childcare incentive could help. And that's it for me. Thank you again.
One of the items that we have on our legislative list is under police and law enforcement, and about the civil service system. And also we're trying to maybe have some lateral hires. And so I'm going to turn it over to Gary Jenkins. As you probably know, Gary's on the board of the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs. He's also testified a number of different times over in Olympia, and he's been on a number of panels nationwide, just like Joe has been on those nationwide panels. So, Gary, you might want to mention some things to the legislators too regarding some of the things that you're seeing and other police officers are seeing in the state. And I know right now they're in the focal point of a lot of different efforts, and some positive, some negative across the state. So, Gary?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. Well, of course, the police academy is a subject that we talk about, I think, every year, and ensuring that we have adequate funding for enough academy classes to hire officers. We have 4 vacancies currently. The funding this year was good. Legislature stepped up and funded academy classes, and even with COVID, the academy was very adaptable and was able to make everything work and get graduates out. So it worked really well. But we have seen years in the past where that wasn't funded well, and we have a long waiting list to get officers in, and we have vacancies sitting there. And so that's really important to us. And I think we talked about this at one of the meetings that the mayor referred to, as well as I think we'll see a lot of police reform bills coming forward. And I appreciated the comments by Representative Smick about that, and really whether there's really a big need for that or not. I know there's a need in the perception of many people, and so it's something that I think we're going to have to address and discuss. But Washington law enforcement leadership is definitely ready to step up and meet and discuss with all of the stakeholders on those issues to ensure that we have workable solutions that will not be a detriment to our communities, and really will be more of a benefit to our communities. So I look forward to talking with all 3 of you as the session moves forward.
Thank you, Gary. We also have our fire chief, Mike Heston, on, and we also have an item there from the fire service dealing with the fire academy too. Mike, do you just want to give a brief outlook on that one? We are sending some of our firefighters to the academy.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and welcome, representatives. Yeah, we try to utilize the fire academy as well, because it's too hard for us to train our folks while they're on duty with too many calls and interruptions. So, and the cost of that is just going up each year. But it's a fantastic facility over at North Bend. So I'd like to see some extra support over there, just like the police department gets, as far as sending folks over to that academy. And I think the other thing on the legislative agenda was the aerial support that Representative Dye has been working with, and I've testified as well over in Olympia for that as well. So we appreciate that support for that to keep that moving forward. Not sure that would have helped on the day of our fire in Malden and Pine City because the resources were tapped out due to all the other fires and activity that were going on that day. So that was just a bad situation overall. Thank you, Mayor.
And Mike, since I made the announcement right at the beginning about the Lions Club and Santa Claus, I can tell you he's currently in my neighborhood. I can hear the speaker system. So the Lions Club is making their way around. So
well, I hope they got a noise variance on that. So
we're good, I think. Okay. Other back to Dan.
Thank you, Mayor. I've been sitting here and I know that I've heard a couple of comments about schools, and obviously the school district is a different government agency than us. But since the topic was brought up, it's got me thinking about the news that we've been getting this week that the vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine, has been delivered to Washington, and Washington has already issued the distribution plan for that. But I'm wondering if there's any effort from the legislature to continue discussions, with the governor's office about the fact that the whole nature of the pandemic has been dynamic. We've had to shift back and forth on different points, and as we're talking about the issue of schools reopening and kids needing to get back into a structured environment, is there any effort to discuss the vaccine distribution involving education workers? Because I know that has been a concern that I've been hearing from our community, and my parents are both now retired from the school district, but that's something, they've retired before the pandemic, but they are still hearing from all their former colleagues a lot of fear about going back to in-class instruction, because a lot of elementary school teachers are older and maybe in higher risk categories. And I know that if there was some sort of part of them being included earlier on in a vaccine distribution plan, that might relieve some of the pressures that school districts are facing in those kind of decisions about when to return to school.
If I can address that, the Department of Health did work on a plan along with the governor's office, and they took all these things into consideration. And I thought the plan that they put together was reasonable. I think you're going to see your healthcare workers first, and then nursing homes. Look, we know this has been going on long enough that I think we've got a pretty good idea who is at risk, and those are the folks that got to be taken care of first. Beyond that, we just have to wait and see. It's all going to be predicated upon the supply of vaccine coming into the state. This first batch of vaccine, I understand Whitman County didn't get any. And so, but as more comes into the state, and it's going to be coming in right along now, I think the county will be getting some. But we've got to take care of the folks first who really are at risk, and then kind of just work our way through. But there is a plan, yes.
So, Joe, just like you said there, Whitman County got none. That's kind of the big finger to me from Olympia. We've got the university. We were leading for a while cases and nothing to Whitman County. That's very disappointing to me, and I don't think that that's very fair.
I assume that the legislators have looked into that. I know that we were supposed to be receiving some right away. We actually have the storage capability at WSU for the temperature that's required for the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines. So,
I think it's going to be just a matter of numbers and the number of vaccines coming into the state, the supply of the vaccine.
Okay.
I'll go through a couple of the meetings I've had this week, Mayor.
Yeah.
Comments I've heard. And right now, I think that getting our schools open is the answer to a lot of things. We know we've got academic failures. We know we have kids with mental health problems. We have daycare problems, parents that can't go back to work again. And in many cases, the local school board has the say over that. But whether I've been in the Tri-Cities and we heard about mental health of the students, failure rates, education calls the last 2 days, and getting those schools at least open for the younger kids at the earliest possible time is paramount to several of the problems we're facing. And as a taxpayer, we have to ask ourselves the question, how do we catch up with 6 months or 9 months of less than desirable education? We can't wave a magic wand and make somewhere we have to make up that ground academically. And that's a question as taxpayers we have to ask ourselves.
And you may have heard that Pullman will be opening for K through 1 first on January 4th. They'll start, and then they'll start phasing the other grades in to get them back safely in the classroom.
Well, we've got a lot of districts in the region that have elementary schools open more than K1 and have been. And the trace back haven't been there. And, you know, when we look at those youngest kids that you don't tell a 7-year-old to turn the computer on and study all day by themselves. We've got a real issue brewing there that we can't long ignore.
Glenn, wasn't it K through 4, or did I miss that?
It was kindergarten and first grade, the first 2 weeks, as far as I heard, and then it goes to the next grades. And Mark, you probably also heard the same things that we heard, that we've had a number, I think in the neighborhood of 12 families that have moved their children over to Colfax because they were meeting in regular sessions. Well,
we've seen people move with their feet because we're a choice state. We've seen people homeschool because of the initiative or referendum last year failing. We've seen people go to online academies. And historically, the state hasn't made up declining enrollment dollars because the base of funding for K-12 is your enrollment, same as higher ed. And sometimes there'll be a little cushion, but the reality of it is they don't automatically make that up.
So we're going to go around now. If there's any other council members who would like to bring anything, we'll go to Al next, and then to Eileen. So Al and then Eileen. Okay.
Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate a lot of the conversation this evening about small business. You know, you guys are from small towns. You all understand what's going on, even probably worse in some of your cities than Pullman. But it is bad. And Joe, you're absolutely right. We know how to open these businesses, and we know how to open them and allow people to shop and support our businesses. But with the way it is right now, it's just killing us. And if this continues after the January 4th date, it's going to be even more disastrous. And so
sounds like we're having an internet problem with Al. So Al, looks like your internet's frozen. That's another example of how we need to get better internet service around here. Eileen, we'll go to you next.
Sorry, the unmute thing. We've sort of touched on this area, and again, I thought, did I hear Mary say she was hoping to continue to serve on the education committee? I think one of the things we may learn from COVID is that the traditional educational models don't work for every student. I've heard some real success stories about how my neighbor has an at-risk 15-year-old, and her grades and her school performance have improved remarkably. I mean, this is a family with a lot of challenges, and this is working for them. So I would like to, see our legislators, and I know they are, open to different educational models and being able to look around and see what proposals may be brought forward to do a better job of serving every child and every family with the more individualized needs. Thank you.
There we go. Yeah, it that one button, just one. But I think all our legislators have been making this comment a number of years that one size does not fit all. And that's one thing we try to make with the governor's office, that, I wish we could have done things regionally, because when your hospitals are impacted and everything else is happening and your ICUs are filled, it makes a big difference. But when you have things under control somewhat, then you're hoping that you can at least keep the businesses going, especially when you're 8 miles away from a state that does have things moving as well. I'll go one more time for the for council members, and I'm going to go to Pat Wright next, and then we're going to be wrapping this up. So Pat, yours.
Hey, thank you, Glenn. And thank you to our legislators. I'm not going to belabor you with repeating a lot of what my colleagues have all already said, but I do truly thank you all for your advocacy and your continuing willingness to listen to us and to carry our concerns and issues forward. Means a lot. We appreciate you all. Thank you.
And now we'll go back to you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Apparently, you didn't hear any of my comments from just
we heard a number of your comments, and then it just froze up on us.
Okay.
You were talking about the small businesses. You were talking about how if it extended past January 4th, we would really. We got that part.
Okay, I just it's a dire situation with all of this, and I just need you all to continue to work as much as possible. If we don't open after that January 4th in some way, with the majority of these businesses in Pullman and all the other cities in your district, Joe, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Mark, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Mary, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You're even smaller cities than we are. So please continue to put the pressure on as much as possible for them to open up. As Joe even said earlier, we know how to do this. We can do it, and that we can do it safely. So thank you very much.
And I know that I read where the Washington Hospitality Association has been lobbying the governor, because when you look at the number of restaurants that have closed statewide, I mean, there was over 80 just in downtown Seattle, and then you start adding other businesses to that. You would tend to think that something happening in downtown Seattle would actually catch the interest of somebody over in Olympia. But, sometimes over here on the east side, we feel sometimes we get ignored. But I'll go one more time for council members, and then let's just have a quick summary from our representatives. Mary, I'll go to you first, because I know you can't see me. So, Mary, if there's any closing comments you want to make, and then we'll go to Joe, and then we'll go to our senator. And I could have lost Mary too, because I don't see her name up there. Mary, you're still there?
I am here. I switched phones, and so
Okay.
I apologize for that. So we had a blip simultaneously with Al. First of all, I really appreciate your comments tonight, and I'm very sympathetic to the situation in Pullman in particular. The impacts on your business community are deep and real, and I will assure you that all three of us are working very hard to find ways to open this thing up sooner than later, and if we can, we'll be very grateful. It's not a good situation for us to even make that attempt, but I think I think what you said about vaccines is really important, that you didn't get an allocation, and I think that we'll obviously be advocating very strongly that it's equitably distributed to all our communities across the state, and that was a big oversight. And I hope that we can continue to pound the message home that
this is social justice 101, and they missed that chapter in the book, I guess, that you have to make sure that the small business and the business community in rural has as much survivability as any business. And it's very frustrating to see big box and national franchises living the life while our small Main Street communities are being impacted so negatively. So I appreciate it. We'll continue fighting for you.
Thank you, Mary. Representative Joe Schmick.
Well, again, I appreciate everybody being on the phone. Thank you very much. Value your comments. In my office, we will make every effort to get you in, however means that we have to do, and we'll make those. So don't be surprised if we have early morning or later evening meetings, but I will do everything I can to make sure that you have great access. And thank you again for having us.
Thank you, Joe. Mark Sessler.
Well, thank you, each and every one. We've been doing this for a long, long time, and I think we all value this annual get-together. I think with all the things going on, you all belong to the Association of Washington Cities, but you also belong to other professional trade business organizations. And I think the direct individual contact with the legislature this year is more important than ever, because we won't have an insurance agents day, we won't have a landlord's day, realtors, AWC, AWB, those aren't going to happen. So I think the value of the individual contact with the legislature, not just your own members, but others, is probably more important than any time in history.
And again, we want to thank you for being with us not only once a year, but all the time. And in terms of like that government affairs committee meeting, also the fact that we can text you or we can call you and we get a response, we definitely appreciate that. So thank you so much again for being with us tonight. Appreciate it. With that, we will now go on our agenda for our council meeting tonight. The next item is our consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to read the consent agenda by title only?
So moved.
Second.
Move and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? With that, we're going to go to our, I was going to say our birthday person, Laura McAloon. And we also know that Rob Baker, who's on here tonight, also has a birthday today. So happy birthday to both of you. And now you can read the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye. We've already done that. So here we go. Laura?
Thank you. And you gave me an exceptionally long consent agenda for my birthday gift, so I appreciate that. Your consent agenda consists of a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes of the November 10, 2020 meeting and approve them as submitted, a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes of the November 17, 2020 meeting and approve them as submitted, a motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks numbered 101669 through 101678, electronic wires 659 through 662, and payroll direct deposits 65179 through 65489, totaling $822,884.19. A motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks numbered 101679 through 101759, totaling $666,859.76. A motion to ratify change order number 4 to the City Hall Parks and Recreation Center relocation contract. A motion to ratify change order number 5 to the City Hall and Parks and Recreation Center relocation contract. A motion to authorize execution of renewal licenses with CDW-G state contract pricing for Microsoft software assistance. A motion to accept the bid from Bush Distributors, Inc. to furnish the City of Pullman's fuel for the year 2021. A motion to approve lodging tax grant recommendation for the Pullman-Moscow Regional Airport in the amount of up to $250,000. A motion to approve lodging tax grant recommendation for the Pacific Northwest Golf Association in the amount of up to $15,000. A motion to adopt the City of Pullman legislative priorities for 2021. Resolution number R-83-20, a resolution authorizing the execution of a second amendment to agreement relating to proration of capital and operating costs of the Pullman wastewater treatment plant between the City of Pullman and Washington State University, an institution of higher education and agency of the State of Washington, to extend the term through June 30, 2022. Resolution number R-84-20, a resolution declaring certain accounts receivable due to the City of Pullman to be bad debts and removing said accounts from the active accounting records of the city. Resolution number R-85-20, a resolution authorizing the execution of a fuel tax grant agreement between the City of Pullman and the Washington State Transportation Improvement Board for the Terraview Drive North Fairway Drive Roundabout Project. And resolution number R-86-20, a resolution authorizing short-term loans from the Utility Fund to the Pullman-Wasco Airport Agency Fund, superseding resolution number R-93-17.
I've heard from Council Member Pat Wright, who would like to pull item number 9. Is there any other council members who would like to have an item? Al Sorensen.
Number 8, please.
Number 8. Okay, is there any others? Then the consent agenda consists of items 1 through 7, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? With that, Pat Wright first on item number 9.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So item number 9 has to do with actually amending a grant that was approved last year for the airport. And I've asked Tony Bean to join us tonight to explain what the amendment is to this previously approved grant. I see he's on, but he's muted. Are you there, Tony?
I am. Can you hear me?
We can. And
Okay.
I also wanted to take the opportunity to once again say how wonderful and blessed we are to have someone like Tony running our airport for us. He's passionate about what he does and just goes above and beyond everything that's required to find additional funding in any places available. And so we are really, really very, very lucky to have him. So I just like to reiterate that, like we haven't heard that before, but it's important, even more so now. Thank you. All yours, Tony.
Thank you. I very much appreciate it. So the request was for an amendment for what is known as a revenue guarantee. And we talked about it last year with the airlines. It's basically an insurance policy. The airline may not use it necessarily, but the likelihood with COVID-19, they're probably going to use it. But it's monies that the airport can do certain things with airport revenue. We can offset landing fees and operational fees for a period of time as per FAA. We can waive terminal rents for a year. We can do marketing. There's rules that go with it. What we cannot use airport revenue for is the revenue guarantee itself. It's illegal. So we're prohibited from using airport revenue to do that. Our discussions with airlines to date, we received the Air Service Development Grant the City of Pullman did for the $780,000. We went to industry and got pledges from industry. Right now, it's a very difficult thing to go back to industry and business partners and ask for additional pledges. So we looked at the county because it's economic development. Air Service, maybe the best way to put it is, persons in airplane seats equals heads in beds, as it were, in the hotel. And tourism, the linkage is extremely strong. When somebody flies into your community, it's a different economic impact than if they drive. And what COVID is doing right now with the airline industry is it is making availability for crews and aircraft. You're starting to see things change quickly. And at some point when we come out of this, we need to be positioned to be able to take advantage of that and to help with the reduction in that risk. So our discussions with the airlines came back as, okay, really to be competitive, because for us, in the air service development effort, we've never been able to have a seat at the table because we just weren't capable with the restrictions on the runway and all of the work that all of you have done, not just the city of Pullman, but regionally, and all of the sweat equity and things that have had to happen to get the airport to where the runway meets standards and can handle these things. That opens up the opportunity now to be able to get a return on your investment. And that return comes in the form of airline service and additional options for the community and for the citizenry that support the airport. But we have to help with that to some extent, and we needed some additional push to be able to go to the airlines and say, this is what we can put up. And the number that we came up with the airline was $1.5 million for the revenue guarantee. If the service is successful and they start service and the service starts to really go, you're underwriting their profitability. You're not underwriting the service. The service costs millions of dollars, but it's that profitability and it's that infancy stage for about that first year or two, especially at a smaller airport, that's that certainty piece and getting the service started. Once it's going, it'll go and it goes on its own. You don't underwrite anything anymore. But to get it started at our level, that's the ante it takes to actually get into the competition. And you're competing with communities all over the country for those aircraft and those crews. The county was very gracious and was able to put in 0.09 funds at the amount of $400,000. And then we went and asked the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee to amend our request. That was the grant that we had was 150, and to amend it to 250 to cover the difference in the revenue guarantee. And the airport is pursuing other avenues and internal funds to take care of all of the other things that need to happen.
Okay. Pat, any further comments from you or?
No, other than just to reiterate that, if we're talking about recovery, retention, and recruitment, what we're wanting to do with the airlines, that certainly checks all of those boxes. So it's critical on a number of different levels, but certainly right up front with where our priorities are right now. And thank you, Tony, for your explanation.
And the revenue guarantee was something that Lewiston did a number of years ago just to attract a Delta connection to offer that kind of service. And that's basically the same kind of thing that we're doing here. Matt, would you make a motion on this item number 9 then?
I move to approve the lodging tax grant recommendation for the Pullman Moscow Regional Airport in the amount of up to $250,000.
I see a second.
Second.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Al, you have number 8.
Okay, let me get back to it here. I don't know who to ask the question of here, but I'm curious about the bidding process with this and how long of a time period it was. I know that there could have been another interested party in this, and so I'm just trying to figure out the process a little bit, and so I don't know who can answer that for me.
Kevin Gardis, our Public Works Director.
Yeah, so I'll take a stab at this. I don't know the exact amount of time, Al, that the project was on our website or on the public purchase website, but normally it's about 2 weeks or so, 2 to 3 weeks. And I know we did contact the grain supply when we put it out there to let them know it was there. They did not actually put a bid in, but we notify both Bush and Grange every year that we do this because they're the 2 local ones that supply fuel. From time to time, we get flyers from folks from out of the area, but they're generally way high. And we did get inquiries. Several companies downloaded the documents and looked at it, but we only did get the 1 bid from Bush.
Okay, so we notified the locals, but anyone from outside of the area. They just have to happen to see it, or 2 weeks
Right.
doesn't seem like a very long period of time for the bidding process to me, but
For this, it's a pretty straightforward bid. I mean, it's three components. Really, the piece they supply with the bid is the value added portion, which is what they add to the wholesale rack rate price from Spokane. So
okay.
it's not a lot of work to put the bid together, I guess is what I'm saying.
No, and that's not what I'm saying is finding it and knowing that it is there is maybe the hard part.
Sure.
So
Yeah, we'd love to get two bids, but for whatever reason, the last few times the Grange hasn't put a bid in, even though we've notified them. So,
And again,
Okay.
this bid goes out every year, correct?
this last one, we keep the option in there to carry it over into 2 and 3 years, and we did that last time. But in the past, before that, it's typically every year.
yeah, well, it wasn't the Grange supplier that I was talking about, just so you know. But I'll just make the motion to go ahead and accept the bid from Bush Distributors for the 2021 fuel year.
I see a second.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? With that, we now finish the consent agenda. We move on now to the regular agenda. First up is an ordinance amending another ordinance adopted November 27th, the biennial budget. With that, Mike Urban.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. So the ordinance before you tonight is amending the 2019-2020 budget that was previously adopted in 2018. So when everybody was putting their budgets together in 2018, trying to estimate for 220 and capture revenues and expenditures, from time to time can not be reasonably foreseen, as we see by COVID. So this is a housekeeping item for the end of the year to true up the budget. So when it comes time for the state auditor to come in, we can make sure that we're back in balance. And as the year's been going on, I've been briefing the council on some of the things that I'm going to go over in Exhibit A, most notably the CARES dollars. So capturing those items and then the expenditures that go along with that. So this is just a moment in the Wayback Machine, the 21-22 budget. We just got that passed on the 1st of December, so we're not playing with that tonight. This is merely recognizing some grants that we received that were unanticipated and some expenditures. So I'm just going to jump into that. If you turn your attention to Exhibit A of this resolution, I'll start on the revenues. All 9 of the items on here are grant related. When the original budget was passed, these dollars were not assumed. Certainly the FAA grants for the airport, the CARES grants, and the associated ones that go that with the library and the state. There was the Commerce and Department of Ecology grant. And then transit had some indirect grants from the FTA, and then the additional CARES grant for the airport. So those items were just unanticipated in 2018. So we're asking council to amend the 2020 budget to the tune of $19,314,200 to recognize those. And then page 2 of this is the associated expenses. Again, most of these were unanticipated in 2018. A lot of these items, as you can see, are CARES grant related. There's a few items in here that have to do with the CIP program funds that were passed. So we're truing that up as well, like the library roof, the aquatic center. Those are items that the council approved during the CIP process. Now we're truing up the budget on those. Notably, the City Hall project as well. When the original budget was passed, much of the construction was anticipated in 2019, and we didn't open bids until late in the summer. So most of the work actually happened in 2020. So we're shifting over a lot of that dollars over to here. The Utility Capital Projects grant, that was to recognize the solar panels that have been put on the new recreation center that you can see when you're going up and down Grand. And a lot of that is grant-related expenditures. Transit had some additional improvements that we did for the power, for the new electric buses coming, as well as cameras, and then the airport agency grant to recognize their CARES dollars come through as well. So to the tune of $21,899,500. So staff recommends approval of ordinance, there it is, 20-12, or sorry, yeah, ordinance 20-12 to bring the budget into compliance. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of Mike on this? No hands. Do I hear a motion on this order?
Move to approve ordinance number 20-12.
Second.
Moved and second. Laura, would you please read the item?
Ordinance number 20-12, an ordinance amending ordinance number 18-31, adopted November 27, 2018, and entitled an ordinance adopting a biennial budget for the city of Pullman for the biennium 2019 through 2020.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We now move to item number 2. It's a motion to authorize the mayor to execute a contract between the city of Pullman and Whitman County Humane Society for calendar year 2021. And we have the president of the Whitman County Humane Society, Wendy Ortman, online. Now you can see Wendy. She just appeared. Thank you, Wendy, for being here tonight. We're going to turn it over to Gary Jenkins, our police chief, because the Whitman County Humane Society budget comes under the police department budget. So Gary, it's your.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. You have before you a proposed annual contract with the Whitman County Humane Society for animal shelter services. The Humane Society Board has asked for a 3.5% adjustment in the annual fee, and they provided documentation to justify that adjustment. Staff is recommending the new contract with that 3.5% adjustment. And their primary justification for the increase is that for the past 4 years, they've seen a 30% increase in the intake numbers from Pullman, and Pullman represents 54% of their total intake. So council recommends approval of this contract. And if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer. And also, as the mayor mentioned, the board president, Wendy Ortman, is here as well.
Okay, we'll go to Nathan Weller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Chief. I have a question. Where does the other 46% of intakes come from?
Those are primarily made up of all of the other surrounding areas of Whitman County. So we serve the entire county, not just Pullman, but that's where the other 46% come from.
So cities, rural area, I'm having trouble understanding. I mean, how do you pin down? I don't disagree with the increase, but how do you pin down what's from Pullman, or if it's wandering around, or if the animal is wandering around from a farm in the rural area or another city?
So for Pullman, all intakes that come in, usually through the animal care officers, are recorded specifically for Pullman. Everything else is recorded based on the city official that notifies us or brings it to us. That percentage of intakes also doesn't take into account people surrendering animals. So that's just animals brought to us that are at large. So we have a system through our Pet Point program that identifies where the animal was obtained. We do our best to try and capture, if citizens bring an animal in, where exactly that animal was found, so we can identify whether it is Pullman, another rural city, or out in a rural area.
What other cities? Sorry, Mr. May, just one more question, if that's okay. What other cities give to that pot of money for Whitman County Humane Society?
So we have contracts with Albion, Palouse, Garfield. Those are the only other 3 that we have official contracts with. Any other city, it's basically a fee per animal, but we're actively working with a lot of the other surrounding smaller towns to try and get contracts in place.
And the county commissioners, have you approached them?
We have not.
Just a suggestion. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
I'm surprised Colfax isn't part of those contracts.
So am I. But that's our goal moving forward, is to try and better establish ourselves in all of Whitman County and not just Pullman.
Excellent. And I know that you're also don't have as many funds because we didn't have Yappy Hour and Furball this year either. We're certainly hoping to get that back again. It's a great event. Any other questions or any other comments? If not, do I hear a motion on this to authorize the contract?
So moved.
Do I see a second? Moving second. Laura, would you read that document, please, of the item? And we'll have to have you off mute. Laura,
Sorry about that. A motion to approve and authorize the mayor to execute a contract between the city and Whitman County Humane Society Incorporated for calendar year 2021.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Thank you for that. And Wendy, thank you for being with us tonight. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Item number 3 is another item that we'll hear from Kevin Gardis on, about property damage release of claims for Bitco General Insurance Corporation, and Kevin can explain it.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. In conjunction with the UV disinfection project at the city's wastewater treatment plant, the electrical subcontractor, Mountain States Electrical, was performing punch list work on June 4th of this year, which required de-energization of the UV system and a switch over to generator power. Unfortunately, during the switch from plant power to generator power, an unbalanced load was sent to one of the UV channels, which consequently damaged multiple components, making the channel inoperable. In order to get the channel repaired, the plant operators quickly worked with the manufacturer to diagnose the damaged components and get new components ordered and shipped to the plant. The final list of damaged components was 13 UV lamp drivers, 2 communication boards, and a cooling unit for the power distribution center. All repairs were complete, and the channel was brought back online during the first week of August, and the total cost of repairs incurred by the city was $21,141.87. Meanwhile, Mountain States Electrical, who fully admitted they caused the damages, asked their insurance company, Bitco General Insurance Corporation, to determine if the cost could be covered under their insurance policy. On September 4th, Bitco determined that the damages from the June 4th event would be covered by said insurance policy. At this time, Bitco sent a property damage release of claims to the city for execution, which would then trigger payment of 100% of the repair cost directly to the city of Pullman. Staff consulted with our city attorney, who explained that it would be best to continue operating the system for a while to make sure there were no latent issues, because once the release is executed, the city would no longer be able to recover any additional claims related to the June 4th event. Since that time, the plant has performed a stress test on the channel and continued to operate it over the last 4.5 months, and there have been absolutely no issues. At this point, staff has no further reservations and recommends that the property damage release of claims with Bitco be executed. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions on this? Not seeing any. Do I hear a motion on this to authorize the execution?
So moved. Second.
Laura, would you read that item?
A motion to authorize execution of a property damage release of claims with Bitco General Insurance Corporation for damages that occurred on June 4, 2020 at the Pullman wastewater treatment plant.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With this, Rob Baker, I have not heard of anyone coming on for new business tonight. Do you have anybody that you have notified, or do we have any notification of any new business? I have not heard of any. And Dee also says no. So with that, I just want, before we adjourn, I just want to take this time to thank Mike Urban for doing a fantastic job, not only as our finance and administrative manager, but also filling in as the interim city administrator right now. We're working hand in glove every single day. We have contact. We're working together to do the best we can for the city. We've got some great suggestions that came in from the council. We appreciate that. But I just want to thank Mike for all the stepping and really doing a fantastic job on behalf of all of us. So with that, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved.
Well, everyone came in on that one. I like that. Do I have a second for that? Okay. I think we got a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? And happy holidays to all and a happy new year.
Thank you
Happy
all.
holidays, everyone.
Thank you.
Birthday, Lauren, Rob.
Thank you.